On this week's episode of Your Fave is Problematic and Needs to be Reworked for Modern Audiences, Tinkerbell. Oh joy. For a while now, there have been activists who are demanding change from our entertainment. Whether it's removing tropes they deem problematic, like the damsel in distress princess, or update a piece of media for modern audiences. And sure, there are things that just haven't aged well, but half the time that just means sucking the fun out of everything. While it's perfectly fine to critique these movies, I don't think they're perfect either, but oftentimes they have a habit of bashing what came before, or focusing on things that aren't really a big deal, like questioning where Tinkerbell's glow comes from. Apparently they were concerned it was too unrealistic and it would confuse audiences, which is pretty weird considering she's a 5-inch fairy. It doesn't really seem like it's worth being concerned over something like that. I mean, why wouldn't she glow? How could Disney of all companies be lacking in imagination? But another point of contention with the character was that in the original movie she had anger management problems, to the point where she was extremely jealous and tried to kill Wendy because she saw her as competition for Peter. Also, she has some body image issues, and they're worried she'll pass that on to kids. So now they're removing her from the Walt Disney World meet and greet. I could understand if they were just rotating characters, but allegedly, according to a Walt Disney World representative, they specifically say it's because she's viewed as problematic, and they're worried about the messages she could send. I wouldn't be surprised if this did end up being the case. Disney has a habit of hating on their own material. Even back in 2003 when the Cheetah Girls came out, they had a whole song dissing Cinderella, which is literally victim blaming an abuse victim. So why wouldn't they come after Tink? Which doesn't really make sense because they've already done a lot with her character. Tink stars in her own movie franchise, where they really expand on her character and the lore of Pixie Hollow, and those movies were a pretty big hit with kids. So it seems like Disney has already addressed a lot of their problems with her character. They even added a bit of realism to those movies in a way that made sense, where all the clothes in Pixie Hollow are made out of natural materials like leaves or flower petals. That's a really cute detail, and it makes sense given they're fairies, so I don't get why they would suddenly write her off like this. And honestly, it's okay for characters to have flaws. That's what makes them interesting. They're acting like they're doing us some kind of favor, but honestly, who asked for this? Disney seems to be pretty ashamed of their own legacy, and we've been seeing the effects of this over the last decade or so. They're clearly so worried about falling into these old stereotypes that they're doing everything in their power to avoid it. But unfortunately, they're more worried about these politics than actually making a good story. And honestly, I think it's hurting their company. Take the reasons they listed for cutting Starboy as Asha's love interest. It includes things like people believing a woman falling for a man isn't a good thing, and that they had to show Asha as a strong and independent character who doesn't need a man. Again, this is probably in response to Cinderella and the other classic princesses, but I always saw this as a bad faith critique and it totally comes off as victim blaming. Cinderella and the others were put in terrible situations and abused by the people who were supposed to protect them. And the truth is they don't just sit around and wait to be rescued. I mean, Cinderella is able to prove her identity by revealing the other slipper, and Snow White's actually pretty active. She takes charge of the dwarves' cottage, and the only real mistake she made was talking to a stranger. I could go on, but the point is their detractors just don't give them enough credit. I'm just kind of sick of people equating power with how hard you can punch, or how much you can destroy. Having a strong moral character, even in a terrible situation, or when you're being treated unfairly, is also strength. And that's true for any character, regardless of their gender. Now it seems they're so worried that they're going to get this criticism again, that they're overcompensating by removing already established characters, or avoiding tropes like the love interest, which is also removing characters.
It's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
But again, Disney has already proven that it's unnecessary. Just look at Rapunzel and Flynn Rider. Everyone loves them together. They really complement each other and have a great dynamic, and they're both fleshed out. Plus again, a lot of the classic love interests get unfair criticism for no reason, like claiming Prince Eric was forcing himself on Ariel when that's not at all what happened. In fact, the opposite is pretty much true. But instead of defending their legacy, Disney just goes along with all of this. And they'd rather make sure the audience knows that their characters are strong and independent, even if it means they lack interesting personalities. And to be honest, the strong female character are usually pretty uninteresting. They're either overly stoic or overly quirky. Even Emily Blunt commented a while back that she was tired of these kinds of characters. And it's pretty obvious that's true for female audiences too. There's also a pretty ugly us versus them mentality that seems to have stemmed from all of this. I discussed some of this in my previous video about how there are now people who are openly rejecting anything that has a diverse character as the protagonist, or even attacking good games because they don't fit their aesthetics. And now we're seeing a bunch of collateral damage, the Mad Max franchise being one of them. There were sequels planned, but according to a recent interview with Tom Hardy, who played Max in the reboot, that likely won't happen now, and it's possible that Furiosa underperforming was a part of that decision. To be fair, there are many factors that likely contributed to Furiosa flopping at the box office, but there was a pretty vocal group of culture warriors who wrote the movie off for having a female lead, and automatically labeling it another girl boss movie. Also, for some reason, they keep insisting they don't want to see a slim woman fighting hand-to-hand combat with large men, but this is Mad Max. The franchise is known for cars and weapons like guns and crossbows. They're acting like the Thunderdome was a boxing match or something. It's not like Furiosa's throwing haymakers around left and right. Why would they think she's punching people?
Gun! Give me the gun! It's not loaded yet!
Either way, isn't it a little silly to complain about realism in these films? Max and Nux crash their car and are able to walk away from the wreckage when realistically they could easily be dead. Not to mention they keep shooting by each other's ears and somehow don't go deaf. But Furiosa being able to wrestle the gun away from Max is where they draw the line. It's like how the game designer for Street Fighter 2, Yoshiki Akamoto, wanted Chun-Li to have a shorter health bar than her male counterparts. Again, because women aren't as strong as men. But maybe lighten up and have some fun. I mean, this is a fighting game where you can shoot fireballs at your opponent. I'm just saying. Furiosa was critically praised and was well received by the audience. They could have made her a Mary Sue or a girl boss, but instead she's a very well-rounded character. But people weren't even willing to give her a chance. And there were even those who wrote off the praise by saying it was just shills for the movie, because no one else is allowed to have an opinion, I guess. But compared to some other franchises like the Terminator, Star Wars, or Lord of the Rings, Mad Max was doing pretty good. And it had a lot of potential as a franchise. Maybe we could have gotten that old Mad Max movie that everyone was wanting. Everything nowadays is seen as too problematic or too woke, depending on who you ask. It really sucks the fun out of everything. And now it looks like we might lose a whole franchise to this culture war. I mean, at least Tinkerbell isn't being totally removed from the parks. I don't know, I'm just sick of this whole thing. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Do you think people are being too hard on Tinkerbell? Do you think Furiosa deserved better? Or do you think their detractors had a point? Let me know in the comments below, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching everyone, I really appreciate it. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to our members. Tyrant Carnivore, Shiny Orc Boy, General Bolivar, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Verdant Range, JVR, Phil C, Taylor Ramirez, Equestron, Norman Sweet Cream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Hunter Rose, 80s Nostalgia Guy, Felix Bam, Lucas Geist, Jay Draws, Meowsers, Sky, Jinke Z, Philip, Isaac Martinez, Garcia XV Legend, Tobias Weller, Bandito Bane, Mac B909, Crimson Phantom, Dakari the Professor, Lil, Datadyne Executive, Owen Wildish, and Jin the Goblin. Thank you all so much for your support. If you'd like to become a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. We also have a Buy Me Coffee if you want to support us that way. If you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content. And that part's free. Thanks again for watching everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.